Homestead. My name is Elizabeth. If you're new, it's so great to have you, and if you're returning, it's wonderful to have you back. This month has been a bit of a challenge for me, for some personal reasons that I won't go into, but I have gotten very into clothing over the years, and especially I want to start making some of my own clothes. I want to start upcycling some clothes, and basically hone some of my sewing abilities. And this month I have a couple of projects to share that are related to that rather than typical, or what might be more typical, like cooking and things like that. This is a little bit more almost a fashion side, but I'm into kind of more practical clothing, or like it can be cute and practical versus excuse me, just fashion centered. So, we're just gonna hang out and I'm gonna craft and show you what I've been working on.
So this is one of two shirts that I had in my closet that I've decided I want to spiff up a little bit. This first one is my test shirt. It had a couple of paint stains on it, so I don't feel too bad if I mess anything up here. As you can see, I'm pinning. I've already cut the sides of the shirt, and I'm struggling a little bit with the pinning because should I have ironed it and then pin it? Yes, I should have. Did I do that? No, not really. And here I am beginning to sew said seam. Still struggling because of that iron, or the fact that I didn't iron, so I'm taking it a little slow. So now I'm working on the crochet insert, and this yarn is a worsted weight, so it's kind of a medium, like when you think of yarn, this is kind of the weight you normally think of. And so that's a little thick for what I'm actually going to want ultimately, but like I said, this is just a test, so I can test the methods that I want to use to put it all together. And the thickness of the yarn will not hinder that. It just won't make as nice of a finished product. But as I've been saying, this is just a test. Here you can see I seamed it incorrectly on one side and better on the other side. So now I've learned a lesson there. And this is the second shirt. As you can see, it's a little snug. It has some ruching on the side. This is the yarn I'm going to put with it. It's a little bit thinner. So this is me cutting the ruching out of the side. I'm having to be really careful because the fabric is bunched up because of the ruching. And I'm just preparing it so that I can make the crochet insert and sew the seam. Here I am with little Shiva. The other cat you saw was Freya. My little goddesses. Here I'm fitting the insert into the side of the shirt just to make sure that it's the right length. I'm adjusting the shirt so that it fits the way that it actually will fit around said insert, and I see that it's a little bit too long, so I'm going to rip out a couple of stitches there. So this is called blocking. I have wet the crocheted fabric, and I'm adjusting it to the size that it needs to be for the insert. And with blocking, you can kind of stretch things out. You can shape them to how you want them to be, and they'll hold that shape a little bit. Again, you wet the fabric and then wring the water out of it as best you can. You don't really wring it because you don't want to stretch the fabric, but then you pin it. In this case, I'm doing 2 layers at a time, so they're the same. You pin it to what I'm using, play mats that you can link together, and then you just let it air dry. Here I am learning from my past mistakes and actually ironing the seam before I try to pin it and sew it. Now we are on the final step, and that is hand stitching the crochet piece into the shirt. I preferred hand stitching for this. I can't really articulate why. I was just a little more confident in my abilities to hand stitch because of the crocheted element. Because I've been crocheting and knitting for a long time, I'm used to stitching those together by hand versus trying on a sewing machine.
So as you can see, I have finished sewing in the inserts. I wouldn't call this project finished. I would really like to kind of tie some of these colors in with the rest of the shirt, maybe a little bit on the collar, a scalloped edge around the bottom. But as of now, I'm calling it tentatively done. Partially because of a time crunch and partially because, you know, I finished what I said I was going to finish. And this whole process was for learning anyway. And I don't necessarily feel the need to completely complete it. Because this was just a technique I wanted to try out. So yeah, this is the shirt thus far.
Hello, and welcome to Knittermission, the intermission where I talk about all things knitting and fiber arts. So, I'm going to do something a little different for Knittermission today. What I want to do is kind of walk you through some of my Pinterest boards for knitting and crocheting and things like that. Just two of them. One is my knitting aesthetic board, which was inspired by Taylor over at Wool Needles Hands. She did a video about having your knitting aesthetic or a mood board or something that if for any time you need inspiration, you can go to this board and it's colors that you like, just anything that inspires you in relation, in this case, to knitting and crocheting and fiber arts. And yeah, so I want to share that board as well as part of my knitting board, or knitting and crochet board. That board is a lot bigger, and I don't want to share the entire thing because if you want to see it, you can just go to Pinterest and find it. But also because we just don't have that kind of time. It's a fairly large board. So, oh, I almost forgot. We need to address the sweater in the room. Let me show it off a little bit. And I'll post a picture of it as well because obviously I'm not sitting where you can see the whole thing. But I call this my Harvest Moon cardigan because of the colors that inspired it. It was a palette, I think, that was called Harvest Moon. So, yeah, the pattern, oh, I wasn't prepared. I will also link the pattern information as well. It was a free pattern if anybody wants to try it. Yeah, so sorry for not being as prepared as I thought I was. But let's look at some of my Pinterest boards. So here we are at the My Knitting Aesthetic board. I've organized it a little bit so that it doesn't feel as messy. I've kind of grouped some like things together. So as you can see, my beginning here is, somebody knitting, piles of pretty colored yarns, a color yoke sweater. My aesthetic, I would describe it as cozy classic cottagecore, which is a feel you might be getting from a lot of these colors, kind of not quite muted, but a little bit more rustic, I would almost say. Some of them are a little brighter, like these, I think, are a little brighter. These are my color palettes here. Obviously here I have some brightness. I very much like warm, earthy, or dark jewel tones. So you can see that there. This one I actually used the color palette for the sweater that I'm wearing today. And speaking of sweaters, we get into a few color work here, as well as some cabling. I am making currently my first colorwork sweater, and I would like to make kind of an all-around cable like this as well someday. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I need to gather the gumption to do that. So as we continue, we also see some embroidery on knitwork. Lots of fun textures. Here's some more embroidery. And then we get down here into some projects that I'd kind of like to make. I have actually made something similar to this and this as well. I've made a hat very similar to this one. It's my favorite Christmas hat. I have made this sweater in a bright red for my mom. And I have made mountain pillows like these for myself, and they are one of the most asked for things from my friends when they see mine. So there you have it. That is my current board. And here we have the knitting crochet board. It's very similar to the knitting aesthetic, except the knitting aesthetic is just things that I really resonate with, whereas the knitting crocheting board is also things that I see and I think a friend might really enjoy, or I want to make it for somebody else, or things like that. It's more for project ideas than the aesthetic is just kind of a mood board. So starting here, these are some of my more recent, sorry about that. Saved these because I thought a friend would really like them. Don't know if I'm actually going to make them for her or not. I just thought this was super cute. By the way, we're not going to go through the entire board as I have nearly 400 pins. So we will stop at some point, just so you're aware. I mean, we don't have time for that. Saved some colorwork hat patterns, learning how to mend. And again, we have the embroidery on knitwear. Some garments I want to make, such as a top like this. I have some yarn that I have a specific idea for. You'll see a few more of those coming up in a minute. Here's the Katniss cowl, is what it tends to be called on the internet. If anybody is not aware, it is very similar to a garment that Katniss Everdeen wears in the second movie, and the second Hunger Games movie. And when I saw it for the first time, I watched the movie in theaters, and she came on the screen wearing that, and I just looked at her and thought, that is going to take the crafting world by storm. And it kind of did. You could find those patterns everywhere for a while. I am actually working on one in kind of a rust color so that it'll match my wardrobe a little bit better, I think, and be a little less obvious what I was trying to emulate. Here we have more of that style top that I want to do. And we have these cute little Christmas ornaments. I just recently really got into garment making, so you'll see a lot of those at first, and then they'll kind of teeter off a little bit. Oops. I have actually made this project as well. These are both the same thing. I've made these. I did not actually follow the pattern, even though it was free. I just made it up. I also made a bunny like this, except mine was much larger. Again, I should have followed the pattern, but it was cute in the end. I've made this as well. Hot water bottle covers are all the rage right now, and I plan on making some for Christmas presents. I have made my own tree skirt. I ended up sewing it instead of crocheting because I just couldn't, I don't know, I never found a pattern that I liked enough to actually make it, if that makes any sense. Here is Poppy the chicken. For anybody who does not know, there is a pattern called the emotional support chicken, and it is a paid-for pattern that was really big in the knitting community, say about a year ago or so. Basically, everybody was making the emotional support chicken. Excuse me. And
I kind of wanted to make a chicken, so I looked for some different patterns just to make sure that I was going to make one that I really, really liked, and I really enjoyed Poppy the chicken. So I now have Delilah, the emotional support hen, who I will show off one of these days. I am working on this pattern. I've made several with different patterns. Several is a strong word. I made a few with, book covers for Christmas this past year. We have some more tops. I've also made a couple of the crabs. And I made one of these crochet house plants. So as you can see, I'm kind of all over the board in things that I like or I think someone I love might like. Pinterest is my main inspiration. I have made one of these, by the way. It was absolutely adorable. But I do find inspiration as well on Instagram and many other subtle things in life that inspire me. So, and some of these patterns you'll be recognizing from the aesthetic board. Because when I first made it, I went through this board and picked some of my favorite things to start the search. So, oops, didn't mean to highlight that. So that's probably, I've made a few of these. Oh hey, it's a video. Anyway, that's probably all I'll show you today. Just, giving you some inspiration, some ideas. This is actually something that I made. I did not use a pattern. I just threw yarn together and called it a day, and it turned out really cute.
So thank you for joining me for that little excursion. Sorry it kind of ended weird. I just didn't know where to end. I knew I didn't want to do the whole board. But I also was, just where do you end with something like that? So, anyway, thank you again for hanging out with me. And we're going to bind off now and see you wherever I am in the rest of the video. Thank you so much.
So this is my second project for this video. We'll call it an upcycle, even though this sweater was perfectly fine. And I could have worn it as is, but I've decided to embellish with a little bit of embroidery. It's something that I've been seeing on Pinterest and have just been really intrigued by. So right now I'm adding what looks like just random lines, but will be vines in a minute here. Here I am adding, I know my hands are in the way, I apologize, but I'm adding a couple of larger flowers. The white fabric that I have over the sweater and pinned to the sweater is actually water soluble, so when it gets wet it dissolves. That way I can put the design on the water soluble fabric, stitch over both fabrics, and then dissolve the white fabric in water, so all that's left is the stitching and the original sweater. You'll also notice that I have some on the sleeve that I'm going to do some designs there as well. I actually opt out of doing that because I had trouble with the embroidery hoop, and I didn't want it to stretch that material out so much. I didn't have a small enough hoop, so I opted to just not do the sleeve at this time. I've never embroidered on a shoulder before, so I had some trouble with the seams at the shoulder and the ribbing at the collar being thick and trying to get my hoop over them. I didn't show you the complete struggle, but trust me, struggle was there. And here she is, all finished. This only took me a couple of days, and I have a close-up there of the shoulder for you. I'm actually very pleased with this project, and I can't wait to wear it out.
Thank you to those who stayed until the end. It really means a lot to me. It also means a lot to me for those who are happy to subscribe or comment or like. I really appreciate the feedback that I've been getting so far. And if that's not your jam, don't worry about it. No pressure. So yeah, that was my February homesteading experience, I guess we'll call it. Thank you so much again for staying. Take care, friends.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Elizabeth. Happy birthday to you.